Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Friday's webinar from Annika Digital. It's myself and Stanley today. Gurpreet's got the day off. She's going off and doing something else. And I'm really pleased to introduce Chris Dillon. Hi, Chris.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So Chris is our guest speaker for today. He is one of the speakers that attended and presented at Leicester Digital Live. We also work with Chris. We're actually Chris's clients, and we're doing a load of stuff together for our own automation, which is what's the topic for today. So for the people that are new to the Annika Friday webinars, you're very, very welcome. And we have a little bit of a poll at the beginning just so we can get a few more bums on seats. So I'm going to launch the poll straight away. Also, the handouts are available top right. So if you go and click on that, you should be able to download the presentation. And we will be sending the video out in a couple of hours. It takes a couple of hours to process after the webinar finishes. So you should get that around lunchtime. If any of you have got any questions, if you ask them in the chat, I'm here to answer any questions because Chris won't be able to see the questions while he's talking. But we will sort of finish the slides around 5 to 10 to give us about 5 minutes to answer some questions. So hopefully that will answer most of your questions today. So let's start with the polls. So I'm going to start with the first one. I'm going to read the information out because when it's on the video, you can't actually see it. So the first question is, have you used marketing automation before? Yes. So the first answer is yes, I've experience with marketing automation. No, I'm new to marketing automation. I have some basic knowledge, but limited experience. Not sure what it is. Tell me, Chris. Okay. So we're starting to get a few people to answer it. People are a bit slow first thing in the mornings with these polls. So hopefully we get a few answers coming in. Oh, yes, they're starting to come in. So there's a couple of people saying they've got some experience. By far, the majority is I'm either new or I have some very basic knowledge. And then we've got a couple of people that don't even know what it is. So that's brilliant because you're in the right place. Chris is going to explain all of that. But by far the most popular is I have some basic knowledge but limited experience. So that's people probably heard what it is. They may have done something on the course about it. Gurpreet teaches email and marketing automation, but not really seen it in action. Okay, so let's go back to the second question. So the second question is about WhatsApp and specifically WhatsApp for business. So do you use WhatsApp for your business or engage with WhatsApp messages that you receive? I do not use WhatsApp at all. You can answer more than one of these, by the way. I do not use WhatsApp at all. I ignore business WhatsApp messages that I receive. I do engage with WhatsApp messages that I receive. So that's the first bit. That's about receiving. Then the second part is I do not use WhatsApp for my own business, or if you're unemployed, you can tick that one or ignore that one. I'm using WhatsApp for my business, but I've not automated this. I'm using automated WhatsApp and I've even used the API. And now, because we've got a lot of students in the room, API is application, I can program interface. It's a way of one piece of software talking to another. And WhatsApp is owned by Meta, which owns Facebook, and it does have an API, and that's what Annika uses. So when the students filled in their form, you've got a message to say, hey, go and click on our application form. So that's some of the stuff that Chris is going to be talking about. So we have, as you can see from the results, the majority, oops. So coach has just gone by. That freaked me out. The majority of the people have said, I do not use WhatsApp for my own business. And some people, we've got 20% of people saying they don't use WhatsApp at all, which is quite interesting. It's actually really good for setting up groups of family and friends. So if you're not using it, you might want to even consider it just to set up a Christmas WhatsApp or something like that. So hopefully that's useful, Chris. So I'm going to put the poll in now. So if you'd like to open your slides, we can make sure that's working okay.
Of course. 30 seconds. There you go.
Brilliant. Now, for again, anybody that's new, top right of the slides, there's a little arrow which allows you to open them up fully. A little arrow in the top black part. I'm gonna disappear now. Turn my camera and my mic off. So good luck. Introduce yourself properly, and I'll see you in about 45 minutes.
Of course. Thank you very much for introduction. And also thank you to everybody else for joining on this Friday morning. Very, very much appreciated. What I'm going to go through during this presentation is essentially a run through of what I consider marketing automation to be, and why, hopefully by the end of it, you'll agree with me, there are elements of it that essentially become essential to what you do. So first things first, as Anne said, I want to introduce who I am. So I, as Anne knows my story, got into marketing in the same way that I feel everybody gets into marketing, and that's by being a DJ in Magaluf for years. Lots of stories in there that I definitely can't tell people, but one thing that I learned while I was out there, I was looking at how to sell tickets for events that I was doing through organic social media, then through paid social media, and I started to understand people's behaviors. So if you ever go on a holiday like this, the majority of people that are in smaller groups will just wait until they get there to buy their ticket. So it's very difficult to try and find and sell to them before they got there. Also, the larger groups tended to have one or two people that were really, really organized. So I started to learn that if I could get the hen or the stag or whoever was organizing that big holiday to put down a deposit on their ticket, they would do the hard work of selling it to everybody else. What you also learn out there, as my job is to keep people in a bar, is that very often it's smaller things that you can tweak that will have a bigger impact. So I use this example a lot where if you imagine you had a hen do in a bar and then 5 stag do's, the hens really like R&B music, the hen wants really cheesy music, and all of the guys want Mr. Brightside and sort of laddie music. What music do you play to keep an atmosphere in the bar? And a lot of people will say to me, well, there are more guys in the bar, so you play the laddie music because they'll get an atmosphere going better. And the actual answer is you play cheesy music, because if you can impress the hen will keep all of the hens. And if you keep all of the hens, you keep all of the guys, because the guys don't want to be in a bar by themselves. So I started learning a lot of things like that. And that behavioral analysis has really, really helped when I look at how people go through marketing strategies. And while I was out there, I met my amazing wife. And since then, we have had our first child, with our second one due in 6 weeks. So if you see me crying at any point, it's just the emotional aftermath of knowing that that's around the corner. But what that meant on a business side is I've got to save as much time as I possibly can. And I do quite a lot of talks and quite a lot of conferences. And next week is a perfect example. I'm speaking on stage in Belfast on Thursday. I'm training a company in-house on Friday. I'm speaking on stage on Saturday at a 2-day conference. So I'm exhibiting across those 2 days as well. Monday, I have a photo shoot with a client of mine who is doing my professional headshot. So that's the full day out in London. And then Tuesday, I have a sales training event. So I have 6 solid days of work where I'm not in the office and I have very little time to do anything. Of course, I'm speaking on stage on Thursday. So anybody that I want to follow up with that wants to potentially work together, the earliest chance I'm going to have to speak to them is going to be the following Wednesday. That's not going to be great service. So I need to have things in place that look after it in the meantime. So what I am going to do is get those of you that are watching it on a computer to scan this QR code, because I want you to experience what this automation looks like on your side, as well as just telling you what it is. Now, Anne has a link for anybody that's watching it on a phone that needs an actual link to be able to do this. There is a link that will be sent, I'm presuming, through to everybody, but this QR code is here. Now, what is going to happen? You're going to scan that. It's going to ask you for a couple of bits of information, and then it's going to send you a WhatsApp, and I'm going to WhatsApp you as I'm going as well. My hands are going to be up here so you can see that I'm doing it all automatically. I'm also going to send you over a little free gift when you do that as well. So I'm going to send that in the WhatsApp conversation that we have. But what I want you to do is see 2 things, really. One, how easy and fluid it is for you to act on that. I know a few people in the chat mentioned that you don't use WhatsApp at all, and it's about the right percentage. WhatsApp coverage in the UK is about 82% of internet users. It's higher in certain countries, lower in others. The US, it sort of gets split between WhatsApp, Telegram, and iMessage. But then in countries like South Africa, 96% of internet users use WhatsApp. So it varies, but it's always in those sort of high ones. And I'm starting to see the first few people coming through. Now, to show off on my side, just so that you guys can see, I don't know if you can actually still see me or just the presentations, but I have it set on my phone so that I get WhatsApp messages whenever anybody fills out any forms. So on days like today, my phone always goes a little bit crazy. This is really good for me in terms of seeing when people are completing inquiries just at that stage. So as a business owner, if somebody fills out the inquiry on my TikTok, for example, I get notified on WhatsApp immediately. I press one button, it calls them. So if I'm free, I can give them a ring straight away.
We can see your phone, Chris.
Perfect. So I don't know how GDPR compliant this is going to be. I'm going to try and blur bits of it out, but I get all of these messages coming through whenever anybody fills out those forms, so I can see what everybody's doing. Now, you're going to get a picture through from me. Richard has said, what stunning beauty in response to the selfie that he's got. Thank you very much, Richard. Rebecca said the same. Good. Nobody's gone for the easy option of telling me that my hair looks nice today. And as soon as somebody does, I know exactly what kind of people I'm dealing with, which is always fun. The idea, those of you that have got that message through, the idea is that I can interact with you and get you interacting really, really easily. Now, I'm quite cheeky with a few things that I tend to say on these presentations, but most businesses, when they have somebody coming through a process, will just say, thank you for your inquiry, and then we'll get to the next stage and think, okay, well, what happens next? And that isn't a great emotion. It isn't one that we want to elicit because it puts in doubt. So I want to give you two scenarios. Let's say you're waiting for a train, and I know that if I said to most people, what hair? Thank you, Ian. I appreciate that. That's very much appreciated. That's part of the joke, actually, there, Ian. So one of the example that I want to give is if you were at a train station, if I said to you, how long would you rather wait for a train, 5 minutes or 10 minutes? Pretty much everybody says to me 5 minutes because you don't want time wasted. But I'm going to switch that up a little bit and give you two scenarios. Let's say you get to that train and the board just isn't working. You have no information at all. You don't know when the train's coming. You don't know if it's on time. You don't know if it's running, if it's on strike, if you're even on the right platform. You have no information. Now I ask you the question, would you rather wait 5 minutes on that platform or 10 minutes when you know where the train is coming? And the answers always tend to skew that most people don't mind waiting a little bit longer if they have the information. The uncertainty in the middle of that process is something that doesn't help us. We don't like being in that anxiety-riddled state. And people generally prefer the quality of an experience over the speed of that experience. Now, on stage in Claire missed the QR code, so I'm going to go back to that so that you've got that there, Claire, and you can experience everything as we're going through. I explained this while I was on stage in Leicester. There was an airport in Houston who had complaints about how much time people were waiting for baggage. And the solution to that was they put loads of things in to speed everything up. But the real solution that stopped the complaints is when they parked the planes further away from the bags, because it was still the same amount of time for the bags to get to the belt, but that time was occupied by the passengers having to walk from the plane to the baggage belt. And psychologically, we feel that occupied time is occupied. I've had a great experience before. Hopefully, Claire, that you got that on that side. So I've had a great experience before with Direct Line, the company who had, they have a WhatsApp. And I needed to change my business insurance, make sure it didn't renew with them because I'd gone over the amount of employees that were covered. And I could have called them up, spent 25 minutes on the phone, had the problem dealt with, and it would have been fine. It would have taken 25 minutes out of my day. Uber do the same, as you said, David. It's an interesting point about Uber that I'll come back to in a couple of seconds. With Direct Line, I sent them a WhatsApp. They went through the security checks and everything. Took me about a minute. And it was very automated, explained that it was automated and said, right, we're going to get you over to a human. As this is outside of their working hours, we'll get back to you as soon as we can. This was about 6 o'clock at night. 11 o'clock the following morning, I got a message from them saying, hi, I've seen everything here. I can 100% action that. Just do me a favor, confirm that this is the right information. Yes, brilliant. What else can I help with? And I looked at that and went, that's fantastic. It's only taken me 2 minutes of my time to be able to do it. But actually, it's taken 18 hours to get the problem sorted. It took me 2 weeks to realize it had taken 18 hours. Because the quality of my experience through it was a lot better, it made me more likely to recommend them. And David, you mentioned Uber in the chat there. Uber's a really interesting one in that one of the reasons that they exploded was less so because it was an app where you can order a taxi. Apps to order taxis existed before Uber. The real difference is that when you ordered a taxi, you could see where it was. So you didn't have the common uncertainty of ordering a taxi, of looking out the window and saying, oh, when is it going to turn up? Do I put my coat on? Can I have another drink? Like, all of that uncertainty was eliminated because you could go, oh, yeah, it's at the traffic lights. I can have another drink. That was the real success of Uber, was the fact that it removed that uncertainty, as Marco said. So I like to call this the inquiry anxiety problem. The issue of when you put in an inquiry with a business and go, oh, what happens next? Anything that they don't know at that stage is going to hinder their ability to be able to buy. And ultimately, people are lazy, especially when buying something that they don't need. If you have an immediate necessity, if you've got a broken pipe and your house is flooding, you have an immediate necessity at that stage to call a plumber. But if it's just something that you've been putting off or need to buy and you haven't really got that engaged in it, you need to make sure that you're looking after them during that process. People are lazy when it comes to buying things that they don't know they need. Our job as marketers are to show them that they have a pain, that we can help and we can solve that pain, and to bring them along that process. Now, Anne and the team and most marketing companies that I speak to understand that on most people's customer journey, it's a combination of these three things. Your front-end marketing, some sort of inquiry point where they make contact. Generally, that might be a form, especially for lead-based businesses, but something where they give over their information. And then the transaction that happens after that. Now, if it's purely online, that transaction is what your website does. For a lot of businesses, it is speaking on the phone or going through some sort of process. And most businesses focus on this bit. They focus on getting as many people as they can to fill out a form. And for clarity, that bit is important. You need that bit. You need people going through your process. But most businesses forget about this bit. They forget about what happens next. At the point at which an inquiry comes in, what do they experience that gets them to the point where they give you money? And I encourage everybody that I speak to answer this question honestly. When was the last time you went through your own sales process from start to finish? It's also really, really important that you need to remember most people don't care about your business as much as you do. Now, Claire's posting in here that you said, sounds like my sewing. Could you do this? It'll take 5 minutes. All of that and the experience and training behind it, you're completely right. You need to be able to justify that. But it's also setting their expectations at that first end. I'll give examples as I'm going through this presentation of how I do that and how effective it is. Now, this is a very rudimentary graph, but this is a general overview of customers' interest over time if you don't contact them. At the point at which they make an inquiry with your business, they are the most engaged they've been with your business, especially the first inquiry. Because up to that point, they might have seen you, they might have seen this, but they haven't got to the point where they'll action anything. So their interest is here. Now, their interest isn't going to increase if nothing happens after that. It's only ever going to decrease. So what I say to people is, at that stage, put things that encourage them to have that interest. Send them a voice note, send them a video, send them something in that interim that they're going to engage with. The reason I talk about WhatsApp, and I'll talk about the stats of this later, is that it gets seen a hell of a lot more than email. But most of my clients do WhatsApp and email. Some of them do SMS as well, to make sure that they're looking after the customer. Now, an important distinction that I want to make at this stage. When I talk about automation, I'm not talking about removing the human from the process. And this is something a lot of people get wrong. They think, well, I don't want to talk to a robot, so I don't want my customers talking to a robot. And you're right. If you're trying to pretend to be a human being in that process, then it isn't going to work. However, if you start a live chat and it says, just to let you know, this is an automated chat, we will get you to a human as soon as possible. In the meantime, to make it as quick as possible, we're going to ask a few bits of information so that we can pass it on to the human that you're going to get to, so that they've got all of the information up in front and we save you a little bit of time. Everybody then goes, brilliant service. You're still talking to a robot, but how you framed it right at the start is different. And it's a little bit like going to a restaurant. If you turn up at a restaurant and they say, just to let you know, there's a 40-minute wait on food at the moment. It's up to you. If you want to have a seat, you're more than welcome to. But I want to let you know that at the start. If you then sit down and food comes out in 35 minutes, you've gone, wow, they've exceeded the expectation. If the waiter in the middle of that comes over to you and goes, I've just checked in the kitchen, they're still running behind, but I want to get your food out as soon as possible. So as soon as it's ready, I'll bring it straight over. Brilliant. Thank you for the service. You're getting a great tip at the end of it. If none of that bit had have happened and you had have just sat down at the restaurant, after 30 minutes, you're looking at your watch going, where the hell's my food? The only difference there is the expectation setting. And it's an example of doing it in person. But as business owners, we know we can't do all of that in person, because if we did, then, we'd have more time, and none of us have any more time. Now, this process helps with a lot of things. My business works from a basis of inquiries coming in. Then I get people booking in meetings. And spoiler alert, those of you that have filled that in may well get a message from me automatically encouraging you to do so. Get a meeting booked in, and then from the meeting, I sell what I do. I'm very clear on my expectations. I tell people this is a sales call. This is what we're going to run through. If I can help you, we'll work out how the packages work. But one of the things for me is I want people turning up to that meeting. If I get you booking a meeting and you don't turn up, then I can't make a sale on the meeting. So I've got automation in place that means that my current meeting show-up rate is 98.57%. Most people laugh when I say that. I've had 4 no-shows in the last 4 months. And it's because, A, I've set the expectation at the front end really, really well with automation. And B, in their journey to that meeting, they've had reminders that aren't just, your meeting is tomorrow. They're detailed reminders with videos telling them what's going to happen, encouraging them to answer more questions that I'll send over to them. Little micro touch points that I do. So, the most common sales assumption that I have when I speak to people and speak to businesses, and it's important to remember, as I said a few moments ago, not a single customer you have will care about your business as much as you do, nor should they. Also, they're not going to know as much about your business as you do. So you need to treat them in a way that they have no idea what they're talking about. If you can treat every customer coming through as, I'm going to give you the information as if you've never heard of the problem that I solve as possible, you'll get more success further down the line. Now, make it easy for the people that know exactly what they're talking about to skip those stages and go to where they want to. But if you're trying to do it from your perspective where you go, well, of course they're going to do this because that's sensible. I know that. I do it all the time. That's not how people operate. If you can design your process to be as simple, easy, and fluid as possible and give over information in a way that even the slowest of people going through that process would understand it and would get to that point, everybody else benefits. It's a bit like being at a hospital. Having massive signs at a hospital that are designed for people with visual impairments to show them where every single department is a benefit to everybody going through the hospital. Claire says you're making a temporary robot out of yourself until you can step in. Yeah, I mean, it's partly that. It's partly just looking after good service. So I'll talk about this as I go through. I have a video that goes out the second somebody inquires with me that says, and almost verbatim says this: thank you so much for your inquiry. Just to let you know, this is an automated video, but I will reach out to you within the next 24 hours. In the meantime, I know you're going to have questions. Let me answer a few of those questions in this video. And if by the end of it, you want to skip the step where I call you when you're not going to be free, then click the button below the video and book in a time that suits you. And then I answer a few questions and I get them to engage and press buttons. And I mentioned to you guys at the start that scanned the QR code and got the WhatsApp message that I'm going to give you a free gift. So all you have to do in the WhatsApp conversation is just reply with the word plan, PLAN, and it's going to send you over my 24-page document plan on how my follow-up process looks. You can use that blueprint as a bit of an example for what you guys do. It's one of the freebies that I give away as part of my memberships. So just type in plan. And again, this is me making it really easy for you. I don't need to explain to you guys how to type in plan into the WhatsApp conversation that you've just had. It's very easy for you to go there, send me the word plan. My phone will go nuts as everybody's messages start coming through. And you'll get that document sent around about 20 seconds later. Made it easy for you to do that, but ultimately my aim is to get you engaging as much as you can. So let's take a standard sales thing. Most people have a campaign. I'm going to very, very much simplify it, but let's say you have a campaign that's £1,000 in ad spend, generates 100 leads, that generates you 10 sales. Relatively straightforward for numbers. If I said to most people, what do you do if you want to convert that into 20 sales at the end of it? The majority of people turn around to me and say, hi, you need to spend £2,000 because £2,000 will bring you 200 leads, and 200 leads will bring you sales because you're converting 10%. And that makes sense. That's what most people would say. My contention is, in the first example, you still have 90 people who have done the thing that you're going to pay another £2,000 to get 200 people to do. They've already gone past that point. And yes, not everybody is going to buy, but I guarantee it'll be easier to sell to those 90 people who have already been through that process than it will be to sell to another 200 cold people. So let's break this down a little bit more in detail. All right, let's take that same campaign. We've got 100 leads. Of those, 40 people picked up the phone call, which I think is a generous number. There's a whole generation of people that don't pick up the phone anymore. Let's say you do really well on the phone and 20 of the people that answer the call, you get booked into meetings. And let's say you have a decent show-up rate where 15 of those 20 people turn up, 75%. And your sales team smash it on the phone and a third of those people buy. That's your 10 purchases at the end. Why? Say, look at what's happening in the interim. So if at that first bit where the 100 leads come in, if you're sending WhatsApps immediately, engaging with them with videos, telling them what's going to happen, getting them to click buttons as you guys have as you've gone through the process, then fantastic. You'll get more people booking. 42% of my inquiries that come through my process book a meeting in with me within 15 minutes of getting that first message before I've had a chance to get them on the phone. That number jumps up to 68% of people once I call the remaining people that haven't done it in the first place. Just that small change means that further down the line, I have more success. So the 70 people that have answered either a message or a phone call, I get 52% of them to book because I've set expectations a lot easier. I've made it really easy for them to do it. I've not put anything in place for them that's going to hinder this as they go through. And as I said, I have a really good turn-up rate for meetings because I have a good follow-up process to make sure they turn up, to give them value in the interim. My show-up rate is 98%. Let's say we bring that up to 90% in this example. I get 47% of the people attending. Now, your sales team don't need to do anything different to what they've done previously. They'll convert 66% of people, which means you've got 31 purchases out of the same campaign. You've trebled the revenue by just tweaking each individual step, making it easy for people as they go through the process. Now, I ask this question all the time, and I know I'm not going to be able to get a response, but I implore you to ask yourself this. If you had a client that was worth 10 times more money than you've ever had into your business, is their journey going to be the same as somebody that is basically going through your business like normal? Somebody that calls you up and says, Chris, I want to spend 10 times more money than any other client has ever spent. How do I do it? Your follow-up process to that is likely, at least in my experience, to be different to what your standard follow-up process is for everyone, which is completely understandable. My point is it should be the same for everyone because the process that your 10x client is going to go through is going to encourage your 1x client to buy more likely. So you should have the same fluid consistency for everyone. The question is, how do we do that? So I like to call this the every case scenario. I have a fundamental flow that every single inquiry I have goes through. If you do the thing I want, or if you tell me that you're not interested flat out when I give you that opportunity, I take you out of that process. This is what I do for clients. I plan out what their journeys look like, and I plan out what they are, not just with the individual messages. I go into granular detail on what those messages should say. And on the left-hand side of this example, when you do the thing I want, or when you tell me you're not interested, you get removed from that flow. Everybody that comes into my process will get minimum 6 follow-ups via email and WhatsApp. And those follow-ups will say, if you're not interested, tell me. I want you to qualify out as much as qualifying in. It isn't just to try and bug you for the sake of bugging you. If I turn around and say to you, look, if you're flat out not interested in this and it won't have a benefit to your business, tell me, because I don't want to spend time bugging you. I don't want to spend time giving you a ring if you've just already decided, no, that's not for you. If you still think it's interested, click this button and I'll make it really easy for you to do the next step. And that's really effective. And so effective that this stat blew my mind when I heard it. How much more effective is it contacting somebody within 5 minutes versus calling them within the first 30 minutes? And calling them within the first 30 minutes is still very good. As business owners, we generally don't have the time to do that on a consistent basis. But it's 21 times more effective calling somebody and speaking to somebody within the first 5 minutes than the first 30 minutes. And if you run any ads on social media, for example, You've got to think their mentality is that they're scrolling through social media. It's disruptive marketing. You're disrupting what they're doing. The second they do the thing that you want them to do, they're going to go back to doing the thing that they were doing before and aimlessly scrolling. And they might have only spent 30 seconds on what you're doing. My wife says this to me all the time. Something that only takes somebody 30 seconds isn't as enjoyable or memorable as you hope it is. That stat there, Lynn, in terms of the 21x, is actually based on, I've put the source in that slide. If you want the slides for this, by the way, sent through to your WhatsApp, just send me the word slide or slides, and it will send you back this entire presentation. So you'll have those links. The stat there is from leadsimple.com/sales course/improve response time. So that's an actual stat that I found from research. Any stats that I give here, I usually cite them as I'm going through. Now, on the WhatsApp side, what is the WhatsApp API? So WhatsApp has typically 3 tiers. You've got personal WhatsApp, you've got WhatsApp for business, and then you've got what is called WhatsApp's API. There are 3 different tiers to everything. What WhatsApp's API allows us to do, and you'll recognize at least 2 of these logos usually. What WhatsApp's API allows us to do is send automated outbound messages. So the message that you guys had at the start of the presentation where it's sent out to you was completely automatic. There's a message that's scheduled to go to you in 24 hours from today to basically say, look, if you want to book a meeting, let's have a chat. That is designed to go out to you as well. That's automatic. I can automate those. What I can also do is send a WhatsApp out to the entire database. So I can send a mass WhatsApp out to absolutely everybody all at the same time. Now, with WhatsApp's API, there are a few things that I need to do. You need to be a legitimate business. You need to show that to Facebook. It needs to be done through Meta Business Manager. And those broadcast messages need to be approved by Meta the same way a paid ad would need to be approved on Facebook and Instagram.
Chris, you're going to have to explain what you mean by all of that, because most of these people will not be doing Facebook. They won't understand, or Meta ads. They won't know what the business manager is.
Of course, no problem at all. So in the back end of Facebook and Instagram, which is owned by Meta, if you ever hear me talking about Meta, I'm talking about the overview of everything. In the back end, you have a few tiers of what you can have. So you can have a Facebook profile, for example, and an Instagram profile. You can then have Facebook and Instagram pages, which are business orientated. You can manage them in what's called a business suite. And then above the business suite, there's a thing called a business manager. Now, Facebook don't make it particularly clear on what each of the individual tiers are, but consider your business manager the umbrella that owns all of the individual assets. So if you run ads, you'll have an ad account with the system. If you have pages, you might have a Facebook and Instagram page for the business. WhatsApp accounts will also fall under that. So they're your individual assets. Meta Business Manager is what controls them, and it is for your business. So that's how you gain access to it. I can do a more in-depth chat and an in-depth guide in terms of getting access to this. What it allows us to do, though, is use WhatsApp from a business perspective and send those outbound messages when people fill out forms. So you guys have filled out a form from my CRM system. All you've done is scan a QR code, takes you to a landing page. CRM system has a form on it. You fill that out. The CRM system tells WhatsApp to send the message. So that's essentially the flow that you guys have just gone through. But you can trigger it on anything. I know some people in the chat might not be completely up on automation. If you do any basic automations, you may have heard of a tool called Zapier. Anything that you can trigger a zap to happen in Zapier, you can trigger a WhatsApp message on. And there's an awful lot of automation that we can do. In fact, it blows people's minds what you can actually automate. I was speaking to a client earlier. I don't know if anybody's ever seen the little boxes that are about like thin boxes like this that are counters that show you how many followers you have. One of the companies that creates that, you can have a custom one, which can increase any number if you do a little bit of automation. So I'm going to buy one. My wife hasn't given me permission to do this yet, actually, but I will buy one which shows me the value of every deal that I close over the year. So I can have a board here telling me how close I am to my revenue target. And it will go up by the actual amount that somebody contractually agrees because I'll link 2 or 3 systems. I am a nerd when it comes to automation. So the reason I focus on WhatsApp a lot with a lot of things here is simply because of what it can do. Now, Lynn, some of the stats here are my stats. Some of the stats are global stats, and I'll explain that as I'm going through. My current open rate is 96% on WhatsApp. And most importantly, it's an accurate stat. Because with email, you get open rates, but they're reliant on one server telling the other server that it's open. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it does when it hasn't been opened. Apple Mail had that issue a while back. Because this is all within WhatsApp's ecosphere, it's tracking 2 blue ticks. So I can actually see when people are reading and looking at messages. My current open rate is 95. My client average open rate is between 70 and 95 on average. And it depends what kind of campaigns they're running. This next stat, which is messages opened within the first 10 minutes, is a global WhatsApp stat. So globally, across the world, 80% of every WhatsApp message that is sent is opened within the first 10 minutes of it being delivered on that device. It's a global stat, which blows email out of the water. And reply rates, my current reply rate, I think, is about 66%, but most of my clients average over 50%. And replies can be people coming back to you with questions, but they can also be the buttons that you've pressed to engage in a conversation. So I know a lot of people have sent me the word plan, sent me the word slides. You can have a bit of fun with it as well, and you can send certain things. I encourage you to do this at the end of this talk, but if you send me the word flow, F-L-O-W, it will ask you to pick a card, and based on your choices as you go through a little chat bot, it will send you a picture of the card you've picked. I encourage you to do that at the end of the call so that you're not distracted as you go through here. But it's a fun little thing that I use to demonstrate how easy it is for people to interact with these messages. So in terms of my own skeletal plan, this is what most of my process looks like. A simple form that you guys have all been through, regardless of how they get into it, the skeleton is the same. The first message that goes out to people might be different, but they go through a simple form on a landing page, takes them through to a landing page, and generally I have a video on that landing page that explains what happens. And then I send them a WhatsApp and an email. Now, the video, as I said, is explaining and answering a few questions. I have a couple of buttons in some of them that said it's useful, right? Yeah, it's impressive, or meh, it's not for me. All I'm trying to do is get you to press one of the buttons. The more you engage with these messages, the more time you spend engaging with my business, the more likely I am to sell to you further down the line. Now, if you press meh, it's not for me, you get a very upset looking dog. If you press it's impressive, you're brilliant, you're damn right. Do you want to see how chatbots work? And I've given you one button, click there, and then you go through the same process that you guys will go through when you send me the word flow. Haley's going through it at the moment and has picked hearts so far. That flow that Haley's going through, and those of you that will go through it, this is what that looks like in the back end. So based on your choices and answers to questions, you get sent different things. But at the end of it, you're still going to be presented with, this is your card. What do you think? I could use this. It wouldn't work for me, or other options. Well, if you say I could use this, it goes, brilliant. Next step is to book in some time and have a meeting. Here's how you book that in. I equate this to, if you were in your home and you had 2 floors in your home, if you encourage somebody to go from the bottom floor to the top floor, but didn't give them a staircase, it's very hard for them to commit and make that decision. And that's what I think a lot of businesses are doing when they say, thank you for your inquiry, here is how you buy, or thank you for your inquiry, book a meeting immediately. Well, you haven't given them enough reasons to do that. If you put a staircase in, it's one step to go, oh, thank you for your inquiry. What questions have you got? This is the answer to the common question. Do you want this? Yeah, brilliant. Oh, do you want this? Fantastic. Look, because you've done all of that, the next step is for us to have a meeting. It's the logical next thing to happen. Here's how you book the meeting. You're taking them on that journey, and that staircase is a lot easier for them to do. So if you do pick a card, you get sent a picture of the card that comes through. And then at the end of this, as I said, if you click on the I could use this process, then you get presented the option to book a meeting. Now, I make it really easy for people. I've got a calendar link in my CRM system. So that calendar gives you the availability, makes it really hyper simple for you to do so. I even have things in place where if you fill that form to get there, it will automatically fill in your details when you go to that process. So again, I'm making it really easy for you to get to the next step. And as I mentioned at the start, my conversion rate from inquiry to book calls before I make a phone call is 42%. When I call the ones that haven't done it afterwards, then it increases up to 68%. That's a huge number, because if I can get more people booking in calls, and I've qualified out people during this as well, I frame my own pricing quite easily. I say to everybody, people can invest up to £18,000 a year, and people can get started from anything from £47 a month. Well, if £47 a month is outside of your budget at the moment, you'll qualify yourself out at that step. And I encourage you to do it. So once you've booked a meeting, or if you haven't booked a meeting, you get a follow-up email or follow-up WhatsApp and video from me that says, look, thank you for speaking to me earlier on. Next step is to get some time booked in. We had a great chat. That's from my conferences. And I encourage them to book a meeting. And then if they don't, I've got other things that will send to them. I can send my brochure as part of everything, and you guys can access that by just sending the word PDF. I've made it really simple for people to do that as well. I answer questions as I go through, and I've got a 4-step follow-up process for most conferences that I do, which is 24 hours, 48 hours, and 7 days afterwards, all videos from me. If you book a meeting, you get an immediate confirmation on WhatsApp and email. That confirmation double confirms you, so it's got a see you there button. If you click that, you get a response. So I'm encouraging you to go through that as well. And this bit I absolutely love. 24 hours before every meeting that I have, I send a video to you that sets expectations on what's going to happen. That video tells you that I'm going to ask you some questions, you're going to ask me some questions, and if by the end of the process you feel like we would be a good fit to work together, then I'll present my packages, how they work, and we'll book a follow-up call. I'll send you over a written proposal. So you go into the call knowing what's going to happen. None of it is a surprise. And having surprises during that usually hinders people. And then I have a standard customer service one that goes an hour before that just gives them the link so it's right there where they need it to be. I also have different follow-up chains and different videos based on different meetings that they book. So if you're in a proposal follow-up call, for example, I want to make sure that you're setting expectations that this is a proposal follow-up call. And on that call, I'm going to see if you want to go for it. So some of the tips, as Anne said, apply without costs. The automation software is about 150 a month, as you said, but there's a lot that you can do manually in your process. There are a lot of systems that will allow you to do this manually as well. And it might just be setting yourself a reminder to be able to send certain bits. I say to everybody, you don't need to invest thousands and thousands into this. There are ways to do it, and there are effective ways of doing it. And generally speaking, it wouldn't be professional for me to say if you don't invest, you wouldn't get more. But there are definitely things that you can put into place that automate certain tasks, that have one system talking to another, that will allow you to free up time to be able to effectively work with your clients. It's a really, really important bit. So I have a few key takeaways as I go through these. This one sometimes comes across as a bit controversial, but I say that automation offers better customer service by not replacing and supporting customer service. By that, I mean, if you're constantly of the opinion where, right, I'm going to speak to everybody. My most hated sentence at the moment when I speak to businesses and business owners in particular is, I get back to leads as soon as I can. Brilliant. As soon as you can isn't as soon as they need it. If anybody inquires with me right now, I can't get back to them right now. I'm in the middle of this. So as soon as possible for me is after this is done, which might be an hour and a half after they've actually done it. Almost perfectly on time. I've just had an email through that's popped up on my screen saying one of my clients has opened a proposal that I've sent over to them. I automate so that I know when somebody opens a proposal. Because she's automated it, it's triggered the system to send her a WhatsApp to see what questions have you got. Now, it'll explain that it's automated. But absolutely perfect timing as we're talking about this. That WhatsApp's going to go. It's going to encourage that conversation with her. Now, is that going to help me get the sale? Yes. Is it going to get the sale on its own? Probably not. But every little step that I put into this process through an automated bit is going to help me get somebody to that next step. And I'm not automating and optimizing for you to get to the sale from the start. I'm optimizing getting you from that next step up that staircase to get to the next floor. If I can put things in place that automate that and set expectations, tell you what needs to happen, lay out what is going to happen, and quell any doubts that you have at that initial point, it's only going to improve that process. Sending that video that says, just to let you know this is automated, I will reach out in the next 24 hours. In the meantime, watch the answers to these questions. And if at the end of it, you want to skip the stage where I try and call you and you book in a time that suits you, brilliant. That short sentence at the start of that video is very deliberate because it tells you I'm going to call you. It lets you know what the next steps are. It lets you know what is going to happen during that process. And it answers questions that I commonly get asked. It also presents you the option to ask questions from me that aren't being answered in the video. And if you get somebody asking you questions, they're engaging, they're interested. Nobody's asking you a question if they're not interested in what you do. There's a real psychological point to this. If you're looking after people, it should be automated because it needs to go to them at the point at which they're most interested. But it should also be clear to them that it is automated. The issue people have with automation is when they try and pretend it's a human being. And I don't encourage that. Next thing is, if you're listening to this and you're going, right, I want to automate this and this and this, don't try and do everything at once. Because if you're in a position where you're like, right, I've got 30 things that I want to automate when I'm going through it, that's a mountain to climb. Look at your basic flow at the moment, see what in there you can automate, build it, and then add to it as time goes on. I'm always adding to mine. Another question is, ask for help. Now, I mentioned this and I asked this question. I'm always a little bit surprised by the response when I ask this question, but I asked it in Leicester. When you look at your competitors and they're doing better and they might not have a good service, they might not have as good of a product as you do, why are they successful? Go through their process, see what they're doing, see what their service looks like, see what you receive going through their process. Mystery shop, there's nothing illegal about going and inquiring with all of your competitors and seeing what they do. And then, as a great friend of mine once said, you don't copy them, you emulate them, which is a brilliant way of doing it. Next bit is the 3 Ps, and this is something that I've been talking about all the way through. Be personable, personalized, but don't pretend to be a person. Usually, there are some scenarios where it's not terrible to pretend to be a person. But be personable and personalized. So at conferences that I do, there are 5 ways that people can inquire with me. Number 1 is they scan a QR code in this presentation that I do a variant of on stage. I have a QR code on my phone. There is a QR code on the back of my laptop. There is a QR code on the back of my brochures that are there on days. And there's also a QR code on the iPad that I have and the stand. So there's actually 6. Each QR code is different and it is designed to do a slightly different thing. So I know that if you come to me and you scan the QR code at the stand, you're going to get a video that evening that says, thank you for coming to the stand and speaking to me, because you wouldn't scan it if I wasn't talking to you. If you scan the one on my phone, I get you deliberately to do it. So you'll get a video an hour later saying, thank you and stopping and speaking to me. If you see me on stage, you get a video that says, thank you for watching the presentation. The actual skeletal follow-up process is exactly the same for all of them, but the content is different up to a point. So the one that says, we spoke to you yesterday can be the same for all of them. So I'm being personable and I'm personalizing it by pulling through their name and everything like that. But I'm not pretending to be a person. Every part of it is being there. Now, Claire said it's just you by yourself and you do everything. And so am I. It's me and my wife that run this business. I don't have the time to do everything. Flat out, I just don't have the time. Ian's mentioned no QR code on the presentation going through. There is a QR code at the start. And the reason I get you to do it at the start is because I want you to interact as you're going through. I've also found, and I give this advice to a lot of people that do presentations, if you put the QR code at the end, it feels like the presentation's over, so you're less likely to get people to fill it in. About 85% of people that I see in a crowd on stage will fill out a QR code for me. I think at Leicester Digital, about 75 people filled out the QR code at the start. And I know when I've spoken to other speakers at other events, not at LDL, but at other events, when they put it in at the end and go, oh, and by the way, I've got this that I want to give to you, it feels like a sale at the end. Whereas I like to say this, nobody going through this process feels like I've sold them, yet I've got the majority of people to give me over their information and go through a process with me. Last point that I make, and it's the last bit that I make on every presentation that I do, if you're listening to this and think, right, this will be really good to put into practice, just do it. And I'm not just talking about automation here. I'm talking about my experience of listening to webinars, going to conferences. If there are ever any bits where I go, oh, that's actually a really good point. If I don't do it immediately and I go, right, I'm going to put that on my to-do list to do, you'll never get around to doing it. So if there's something that you actually want to do and put into place, set aside time now, go and actually do it. My TikTok at the moment, I get a lot of inquiries and I've made a lot of money through TikTok inquiries. I put out a lot of value on TikTok, about 2 or 3 videos a day. About 3 years ago, I was at a conference and I heard a stat about TikTok that 52% of adults over 25 in the UK, or 52% of users in the UK were adults over the age of 25 on TikTok. That was the stat. And it blew my mind because I, at the time, thought it was just 14-year-olds making an idiot out of themselves. That stat transformed how I looked at TikTok. And I recorded the first video that was there in the foyer. I've been doing it ever since. So business WhatsApp, you don't go into the settings in business WhatsApp itself. Sorry, there was a question asked in the chat. going into Business WhatsApp and look through the settings to set it all up. You'd need to do this in Meta Business Manager.
Okay, so I think what we need to do is, first of all, thank you for an amazing presentation. There's a few questions which you've answered on the go. I'd just like to sort of sum it up, so for everybody else's benefit. So first of all, what Chris is describing is the perfect customer service journey for your clients or potential clients. But instead of, if you've got a huge team and everybody could do that immediately, that would be what would happen. So what he's able to do is replace elements of that with automation. So that is effectively what we're discussing here. Exactly the same with our training. When you guys, a lot of you applied, we had a lead form in Facebook. You immediately got an email within a minute. We also created a list of everybody on a drive sheet, and you also got a WhatsApp message. Okay. Now, 6 months ago, we weren't doing the WhatsApp bit. And the reason we can now do the WhatsApp bit is we've engaged with Chris, and we're using Facebook which has the API for WhatsApp. And we use the software that I mentioned that costs £150 a month is acting as the bridge. Am I allowed to say which one we use, Chris?
Yeah. I'm really transparent with everything.
Yeah. So it's a piece of software called Watty, which allows us to. So if you think about what I've just described, I've got ads running, which you may not need, or I've got a conference where I give a QR code. That's free. One's not. One is free. I then have a process that happens after that. So with the ads, I then use a piece of software called Watty and Zapier to manage that lead trail. If I was just doing this with a QR code, I would need Watty and the Facebook part, wouldn't I? The Facebook Meta Manager to do those bits.
Yeah, and you would need something to collect the data. So you'd need a form of some sort. I think it's really important at this stage. We can make this as complicated as possible. My one is intrinsically quite complicated with how it overlaps because it's my job to do this. But equally, I have clients where it's just really simple, where they might be at a conference and they've got their own landing page on their computer that nobody sees, that when they get a business card, they fill out the details on that, and that starts the process.
Yeah. And that was going to be my next point was if you have got a very simple process at the moment, there's no reason why you can't emulate that. And my advice to people doing any process mapping is to get a whiteboard and a load of Post-it notes and stick it on the board and just sort of map it out, manually. And then sort of say, well, how could I automate that step? Or how could I do this? So for a lot of you, even if you don't engage with WhatsApp, even if you don't use any automation software, what Chris is telling you is fundamental to improving your processes and how you can improve that. And you start simply, and you can get more complicated and more sophisticated. You don't need 5 QR codes at an event, do you, Chris? You can just have one.
Of course not.
Yeah, exactly. So let me just see if there's any more questions. Did you want to make any comments on what I just said, Chris?
To echo exactly what you were saying, I have 5 QR codes because I want to make it slightly different and stand out. But I also know if I just had one QR code there and you got a WhatsApp at 7 o'clock that night, I'm still standing out amongst all of the other stands that are there. And I say that in a respectful way, but I know at conferences, your mind is going to be everywhere because you speak to so many different people. I stand out because I send you a video at 7 o'clock. Now, the reason I have 5 is because I wanted to be even more effective, but just sending one is still amazing. Louise has a good question in there that I'd like to just touch on for about 30 seconds as well about GDPR and the legalities of it. So there are 2 elements of this. Firstly, best practice is to be really clear that if they fill this form out, they're going to get WhatsApp messages from you for a variety of different reasons. I'm very much set the expectations at the front end. Fill this out. I'm going to send you this over WhatsApp, and then I will continue talking to you. If somebody doesn't want to at that stage, I don't want to force them to do it. I don't need to, frankly. You'll notice on the form that you guys went through, there was a little tick box as you went through, but I'm also covered under legitimate interest if I didn't have that tick box. Didn't have the tick box because you've watched a presentation, I have a legit, and then interacted with the conversation. it's a legitimate interest for me to say, would you like a conversation in more detail? Not preaching anything. If I sent you information about me starting an ice cream running business, then I'm in that area where you haven't given me permission to talk to you about that. But the third bit is as well, and this is where it's interesting, WhatsApp is different to email and phone numbers because the user has signed into WhatsApp and had an account and had to agree to terms and conditions to use the platform from a personal standpoint. Part of that term and conditions are that they agree to receive messages from businesses. So it's
yeah, and the other thing is the first thing you do is you give them the opportunity to sort of opt out.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest pieces of advice that Chris gave us when we started going on this journey together was don't just send it to a cold list. Because if you do that, what's going to happen is you're going to get loads of people saying, "Oh, I don't know what this is about. I'm not going to. I don't know who Annika are. I haven't agreed to this." Block, and then what can happen is your whole Facebook campaign account can get blocked. So you have to do it in a way where you are basically asking permission or telling people that that's what you're going to do, because then you're going to get a good response rate. Did you mention the response rates? Because I didn't really pick that up. It might have been I was answering a question, the response rates between WhatsApp and email. Could you just repeat that?
So I'll repeat them. My current response rate, or my current read rate at the moment, is about 95%. The response rate's about 60%. So that's people clicking on buttons.
I think you missed that, because I think it's to do with the fact that an email good opening rate is only 20%, whereas a WhatsApp message is over 80, isn't it? And that was the point I was trying to.
Yeah, it's just when you compare it to email, more people are seeing it, more people are engaging in it, and ultimately, the more people that do that, the better. If you have 100 people inquiring with you and you only get 40 of them on the phone and your email open rate is 30%, then the majority of people haven't seen anything afterwards. They're not going to buy from you because you haven't done anything. So, yeah.
I'm just aware that a lot of people leave at 10 o'clock. So I'm just going to put up the Annika reviews. If you could leave a review if you've enjoyed today, please mention Chris's name and mention Annika for hosting. It just really helps. You will get a bit of a feedback form after this anyway. So if you've got any things like, oh, it was too difficult, don't bother to put that on the review, put that in the feedback. So thank you if you can do that for us. There was another question just came in.
Yeah, Jamie's asked a really good question about the customer journey. And what I was describing is quite linear. So when I build this for customers, for example, I'll build what are called skeletons, Jamie. So you'll have one skeleton, which will be inquiry, and then as if they never do the thing that I want them to do. So that is your linear journey. If at the point at which they book a meeting, I remove them from that flow and put them into another, that's generally through something like a CRM system. So I will have a trigger that will be meeting has been booked, remove from that flow and enter into this flow. So if you send me back the word plan and have a look through that document, you'll see there's like a little train track icon where it looks like sidings going off to one side when people do things. So when they do something that I want or tell me that they're not interested, I remove them from it at the stage at which they do. So it's linear for somebody that doesn't do the thing I want. And then for the person that does do the thing I want, I move them from that bit to this bit, and then that bit's linear until they do something else that I want or don't want them to do.
I just wanted to address Claire's question. She said, is email becoming dormant? I'd say no. As most of you are aware, I speak a lot myself, and I went to a conference the other week where I was asking certain questions to the audience, and one of the questions was, how many of you are using Facebook ads? And this was a conference where everybody was going there specifically to learn about this stuff, and about a third of the people in the room were using Facebook ads. Well, the thing is that unless you've set up a business manager account, you won't be able to use a lot of this technology. And the issue is that most people, unless they do Facebook ads, don't know that business manager accounts are there. Most businesses don't know how to use WhatsApp for business and aren't using it. So actually, this is new technology for most people. I mean, I was aware that you could use WhatsApp business, but I didn't know that until I started speaking to Chris about 6 months ago, that actually the way to get access to it was through the business API, the WhatsApp API. So there was WhatsApp for business, but when did the API become available? In
about summer last year. So it's coming out to
so it's about a year old then.
Yeah, the ability to outbound message. And Claire makes a really good point on the email, as you were touching on there. Email isn't dormant. You'll notice in the plan thing that I send over, I put email and WhatsApp in it.
Yeah, we do both.
And I would recommend doing both, because ultimately you've still got 20% of the country that don't use WhatsApp. So you need to cover the base. But what I would say is they're two different mediums. Your WhatsApp is going to be more customer support, messaging, stuff like that. Your email might be more transactional and more informative, whilst you can make your email the same messaging, but you'd, generally speaking, put more information in an email than a WhatsApp. And what you can also do is say in the WhatsApp, hi, I've just sent you an email, and just time the WhatsApp to go 2 minutes after the email. So the WhatsApp is just sent you the email with loads of information. Any questions, ask me in here. That will actually then go and up your email open rate.
So somebody's asking me about the stats. I haven't actually gone through the analysis, but when we normally send out, when we get our Facebook ads and we send out an email, previously about 20% of the people would complete the application form on the website. And as a lot of you will have come from that source, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So when we do a digital skills boot camp, about 20%. So if it costs me £10 a lead in Facebook, it costs me £50 an application. This time, when we use, so when the last cohort was recruited, we included WhatsApp in that. And I had about twice as many applications. So my application rate doubled, but I haven't got it scientifically. That's just a gut feeling that I was getting about twice as many. Now, interestingly, I then made my screening process. Our screening process was much more thorough this time. So I've ended up with a similar overall amount that actually started the course, but I was able to make sure that the quality of the people that started the course was higher, because on previous cohorts, a lot of people would start and then they would give up because they weren't really suitable, or there was, something else that once we started talking to them made them realize it wasn't for them. So it definitely has made a difference, but I haven't got, I'll get accurate figures in the next few weeks, because we're about to do another, and we're about to recruit for another course as well.
If you don't mind me sharing, Anne, your open rate over the last 30 days on WhatsApp is 83.1%.
Oh, well, that just goes because I've been too busy to look at my own statistics. So that's quite useful to know. I will need to look at that. I mean, it's, as you can imagine, trying to introduce all these new processes as well as develop other stuff at the same time, which is what I've been doing, which is why keep it simple is so important.
Yeah, it's why I put it as one of the points at the end. If you look at this and try and go, oh, I can do this, and then it becomes a massive task, it's a lot harder to go, right, I need to do 30 things. And I know this because part of my service is I work with 6 businesses a year where I go in and build everything for them. Now, I do this professionally, and I limit myself to 6 businesses a year, and that's it. I work with 40 businesses on a consultation basis every year, but those 6 takes me about 5 weeks to go from start to finish on their basic flow of like 4 or 5 skeletons and build that. It takes a lot of time to do that.
And I think the other thing you've got to remember is there's a few other bits to this. So you need to sort of learn how to use Zapier. We were using Zapier anyway. So for Chris, we were what he would call a really well-informed clients, because, we were already Meta verified. Our business account was already verified. I mean, we've been using a Meta Business Manager for at least 6 years. There's a great blog on how to set it up on our website, which is over 5 years old. We were already using Zapier to automate the process. So it was really just an extra step that we were setting in. So it was reasonably easy for us to do that. Interestingly, I've also automated what happens when stuff goes over to Google Drive Sheets as well. So there is other automation that we haven't talked about today. We've not talked about marketing automation within a sort of CRM. The actual CRM system that Chris is using. I use currently SharpSpring. We're migrating over to Go High Level as it's more effective. So you can see that this is just a small part of a automation journey. So when Rishi Sunak starts talking about AI, this is the sort of stuff that actually is pretty bread and butter stuff. And we're really talking about automation rather than AI here. but it can fundamentally improve your productivity. And if you want to grow and scale, if we don't want to take just 20 students on a course, we want to recruit 80. You can't do all that manually. It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we should call it a day. We've got lots of people sending love and lots of thank yous. Next week is GERPA. It's actually presenting on email, which is interesting because we've obviously been talking about the demise of email and whether it's important. Well, I'm sure she's going to show you how important it still is. But I'd just like to thank Chris very much. Brilliant presentation, Chris.
Thank you.
And I know I'm doing some training with you in the next couple of weeks, so I'll be seeing you quite soon.
Sounds really good. Looking forward to it. And thank you for all of the great questions as well for everyone. Really, really good.
They were very good. Thanks a lot, guys. You'll get the recording in a couple of hours.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.